I still don't know how I survived. I shouldn't have. It started when I moved into a cheap apartment in a quiet neighborhood. The place was nothing special. Small, old, but affordable. The kind of place you find when you're trying to escape the noise of the city. My next-door neighbor, Jim, was one of the first people I met. He seemed normal, polite, friendly, always smiling. But something about him felt off. At first, it was small things. I'd see him in the hallway at weird hours. 3 a.m., just standing there, staring at the floor, unmoving. I try not to stare as I passed by him, pretending not to notice. It was like he was waiting. Waiting for something or someone. One time, I left my apartment for work, and he was already outside his door. Like he'd been waiting for me. The way he greeted me was odd. A wide grin, one that didn't quite match the awkwardness of the situation. He didn't even say much, he just smiled and waved. I nodded and kept walking. But something felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling. Then, one night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. I got home late after a long shift, and I was exhausted. I opened the door to my apartment, ready to fall into bed, but as I stepped inside, I saw Jim standing outside my door. Just standing. Not knocking, not moving. Just staring. At first, I thought maybe he was lost or confused. But when I asked what he was doing there, he smiled and said, "I wanted to see how you walk." I didn't know how to respond. I forced a laugh, trying to brush it off as some weird quirk of his. But my heart was pounding. I wanted to slam the door in his face. But he just walked away, leaving me standing there, shaking. I tried to convince myself he was just weird. Some people are weird, right? But then things started getting even worse. It wasn't long before I noticed the smell. It started faint, but soon it became unbearable, a horrible, rotten stench that seeped through the walls. It was like meat left out in the sun, decaying. At first, I thought it was just a bad pipe or some mold. But the smell came from Jim's apartment. The landlord received complaints from the other tenants, but every time he went to check on Jim, he'd always say the same thing, "Just cleaned up, everything's fine." But I knew something was wrong. The smell, it didn't stop. It lingered, clinging to the air. And it seemed to grow worse with every passing day. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came at night. I began to hear it. Jim would laugh. It started softly at first, just a few chuckles here and there. But then it escalated. It became louder. Deep, like someone trying to stifle a scream, but they couldn't. It was slow, deliberate, as if he was savoring something. Sometimes, I'd hear it for hours, and it would stop only when I thought I was about to lose my mind. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was going on. Then, one night, my power went out. The whole building was dark except for one window. It was Jim's apartment. I couldn't resist. My curiosity got the best of me. I pulled the blinds and peered through the window. What I saw made my heart stop. Jim was standing in his living room, facing the wall. There were pictures taped all over it, pictures of people from our building. I stared at the photos, trying to make sense of it. Some of the faces had red X's drawn across them. But what chilled me to the bone was the fact that I recognized every single person in those pictures. They were all tenants from the building. My stomach churned. I scanned the photos, trying to find some explanation. My mind was racing. And then, I saw it, my face. I froze. I didn't see an X on my face. My heart nearly stopped. It felt like the world around me collapsed in an instant. I stepped back too fast, and in that moment, I accidentally knocked over something in my apartment. The sound was deafening in the silence of the building. I held my breath, praying Jim hadn't heard me. Then, just as I started to retreat into the shadows, I saw something that made me freeze in place. Jim's head slowly turned toward the window. And then, he smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was white, sickeningly knowing. My blood ran cold. My hands shook, and I could barely breathe. I backed away from the window, my heart racing. I turned off my phone, locked my door, and tried to convince myself I was just imagining things. But I didn't sleep that night. Hours passed. Nothing. It was eerily silent. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, but sleep wouldn't come. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m. I heard. Knock. Knock. I froze. Knock. Knock. The sound was deliberate, slow. The knocking wasn't frantic. It wasn't someone who was scared. It was someone testing me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, through the door, Jim's voice came, low and chilling. I know you saw. My heart hammered in my chest. I felt the cold sweat pulling on my skin. My fingers gripped the edge of the bed, but I couldn't make a sound. The knocking stopped. But I stayed up until sunrise, praying for the night to end. I didn't dare move until the light of dawn finally broke through. The second the sun rose, I packed a bag and left. I couldn't stay. I couldn't bear to look at that apartment any longer. A week later, I saw the news. Police arrested Jim. They found bones in his walls. Pieces of people. His collection. The reporters were talking about it like it was just another case of a disturbed man. They didn't know the full truth. They didn't know what I had seen. They asked if I ever noticed anything strange. I just shook my head. I didn't tell them about the excess. I didn't tell them my picture was the only one left untouched. I didn't tell them that if I hadn't moved out that night, I would have been next. But then the nightmares started. It began innocently at first, just flashes of Jim's face, standing in the shadows. But soon, it grew worse. I began to hear his voice in my dreams, always whispering my name. And then, a few months ago, I found a strange letter in my mailbox. There was no return address, just my name written in neat handwriting. Inside, there was a single sentence. I've been looking for you. The fear has never left me. I haven't told anyone about the letter. But I know it's only a matter of time before Jim comes back for me. I don't know how I survived that night, but I'm not sure I'll be so lucky next time.